Birth is the ability to transcend.
Welcome.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody. Here we are. There's all three of us. I'm going to turn down my volume a little bit, but I think we're good. So welcome, everybody, to another great, fantastic episode of This Uncanny Earth. Of course, I am in charge tonight. It's my turn. And
Nice. Double
it's
intro. Is anyone else hearing that?
No, I
Oh,
don't think so.
I don't know what's going on. I'm hearing the intro again. Oh,
I don't know what you're doing
My
over
bad.
there in,
Nope.
in Steven Land.
something wasn't muted that should have been muted. That was my bad. Technical
Out in
difficulty
Steve
on my
Land, yeah,
end.
he's getting excited about things that aren't even on the show.
Yep.
I
really am, though.
Yeah, welcome. Before we get started, I know we were going to start integrating this at the beginning, but I guess you forgot about it. So we're going to do it now. This is our affiliate spot for tonight. This is for a friend of ours who has a cooking blog. Check it out. Let me roll it.
This episode of This Uncanny Earth is brought to you by Cooking Basically. Find your new favorite recipe today.
And she has a ton of good food through that. A lot of it I can't eat because it's all cheesy things, and we know I can't do the cheese, and it upsets me. But check her out. You could look that up on Facebook or just do a search for it, and you should be able to find it. Find the blog. If you find it on Facebook, the blog link is there as well. So, gentlemen, how are we doing this evening? How are we surviving in the various states of Ohio, Tennessee, and states of disassociation?
Well, I'm doing okay. I'm excited for this episode. I already had a head start because I actually did an episode about birthdays back on episode 10 of the intern show. So I had a little bit of a head start there.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm doing good. Tired, but I'm good. You know, I'm here. I'm here
Doing the
mentally and
thing.
I'm here physically. So
Doing the thing.
doing the thing.
Getting the business done. So we're gonna roll right into it. Tonight, we're gonna be continuing our series of the stages of life and death. Basically, last week we did death rituals with Steven, and this week we're doing birth rituals. And where do we can start? I don't know what that sentence was supposed to be, but probably 3 sentences in one. I haven't even gotten to the good part of my drink yet.
You're gonna have to, you're gonna start clipping those and putting those as shorts. We'll call it Spider's Mishaps.
Yeah, there's enough of them. We're going to start off with baby showers because I know everybody's excited to talk about that.
Yep.
I say it as a joke, but it's something that anybody who generally has kids or has parents, which is pretty much all of us, even if you don't know who they are, it doesn't matter. You may have had a baby shower. Now, I'm going to start off with the way that we look at it in the United States is super mild and kind of like just a little get-together party kind of thing compared to what a lot of other countries do and what the practice it was based off of in past centuries. To be honest, the baby shower for my daughter, I didn't go. Because
You weren't
being
allowed.
kind of no, not really, but being kind of an aloof doofus most of my life, I assumed it was something that her mom would want to be like the center. I figured she should be the center of attention. I shouldn't be there getting the claps on the back, being because my part wasn't really the hard part. You know what I mean? So, but I figured she should be the center of attention. She's the mother. She's gonna go through the big ordeal, and she's gonna have the baby. So my family put it on for her. And they invited members of her family and things like that, and they coordinated on some things. And it was out on next to the beach, next to Lake Erie, so you could go out and kind of walk around and stuff like that, and that was kind of nice. And I went off and visited with some friends around town just to do a little quick tour of, hey, yeah, she's the baby shower, we're gonna have the kid and that kind of thing, to make it a real special moment, of course, by saying that. But it was pretty typical, I think, of how we celebrate an upcoming birth here in the United States. We do like what we do with everything. With every holiday we have in the United States centers around giving people a pile of stuff. And baby showers are almost an excuse to give people a bunch of stuff that you have that you don't want. So it's almost like a thrift kind of thing without putting too big a tag on it, but it's stuff that's useful. And so she got a lot of stuff that helped out when she had my daughter. And one of the things that they got, not to get too far into the personal details, but one of the things that they got was a little stuffed lamb plush that my daughter still carries around with her to this day at 10 years old. So some things that you can get during the baby shower kind of stuff is still important years later for the development of the child and everything like that. It just depends on how much importance the family puts on that, really. Now, that was my experience with the baby shower. I can't ask Steven about this because Steven doesn't have any kids. So Steven can't weigh in on this as much as he might want to. We'll get to you with some opinions later. Rob, I was there just prior to when your son was born.
Yeah.
But I don't think I was at any sort of baby shower that you guys had.
It was a work thing. So like you, there's no need for me to be there. There was no need for me to be there. Only because, like you said, I did the easy part of that situation at the time. So there was no need. It was, it was all about my son's mother. So there's no reason for me to be there. And typically men don't go to baby showers for that sole reason, because there's no need. I don't need people patting me on the back. Hey, good job, buddy. Great job. You get the good jobs later on from other dads when you're out with your kids or you're doing something. And, because, it's, men, we do our part in the baby making process without getting too deep into detail isn't a long one. It's
depends on who you are.
It's a no, it really doesn't. If you're a
that
man,
part happens pretty quick.
Steven, you don't know because you don't have a baby, so you don't.
Everything else around it, you can just that's whatever. But the actual
keep going.
The actual part that regards to doing the thing that needs to be done for the baby to happen. That's a pretty quick thing, and compared to 9 months. So however many time frame you need compared to 9 months. Our role is very diminished. So I wasn't one for that. You get a lot of diapers. You get so many diapers. And that's not even how many you'll be using. You'll blow through that in a matter of maybe a month, if that, a couple weeks, because babies do like to go to the bathroom frequently. And it's usually just runny mess. That's all I'll say. So, like I said, it's not something I partake in because I'm not the focal point.
We did cloth, so we washed our own, which saved us some money. But man, it was an effort. And we don't want to get too far into that. That's not what the show is about. The show
This
is
isn't
about
babies.
how people
This isn't about
approach
babies.
when the leading up to the birth and possibly even past the birth, because other cultures, as we're going to get into later, do the baby shower after the baby's been born.
Yeah, I've heard that.
So it's interesting how ours in the United States, and I keep calling it, it's just, this isn't really a show specifically about baby showers, as much as it's kind of funny to say that. It's based off of older ritualistic actions that we've carried forward. And here, again, in the United States and in some other countries, it's kind of been distilled down into a light party of sorts where you just get things that are useful. And I don't want to leave Steven out completely, but I'm going to let him talk about some things here. As far as, because you don't have any direct experience with this, what, as a person outside of it, have you seen about any baby showers? Has anybody ever invited you to one?
Yes, I went to one of my friend's baby showers, and I went to my brother's baby shower. But I would like to
That
point
came
out,
off really rude, by the way. I don't want to interrupt you, but I
Oh.
came out like, did anybody ever invite you to one? I didn't mean
I
to sound like
wouldn't.
that.
I wouldn't invite Steven to a
I
baby
didn't mean to
shower.
sound like
That's
that,
me.
and I went to my brother's baby shower. But I would like to point out that when I was doing my research for all this, it said that typically only the firstborn child gets a baby shower. And before I stop, also I would like to add on to what you said a second ago about sometimes there's a baby shower after the baby is born. That is called Keen Puntat
In some cultures.
Bless you.
in some cultures.
We are going to get to that too. So you're going to be able to talk and expand more on that. We're going to get into that kind of thing in a minute.
Which,
here.
to be fair, would be the logical way to go, because God forbid something happens to the baby, before the baby's born, which these things happen.
Yeah.
So I've had a couple friends have lost children, before they were born. So I think that would be a better idea. But once again, it would be more of both parents being celebrated. And I just think it's better if the mother celebrated for that purpose.
Now, an interesting thing is that, because I've been to, when I was a lot younger, my family was pretty tight knit, and occasionally you'd get together and we wouldn't necessarily have baby showers per se. Like there would be the baby shower, but then there'd be separate parties where the whole family would get together and just, be happy that, hey, there's going to be a new member of the family soon. And it was just a get together. It was just a party. It wasn't like, you didn't do specific things. You didn't go through specific motions. You just, there might be gifts involved, but it wasn't, a huge thing. But according to Wikipedia, they place an awful lot of importance on it compared to what I've seen at any time. And maybe it's just, maybe Ohio and Pennsylvania and this part of the United States is kind of whatever about it. Maybe other places are more formal about it, but according to Wikipedia, they call it a rite of passage. And they also call it the only public event that recognizes a woman's transition into motherhood, which is kind of a big phrase. And I think that's a leftover from what it used to be. I think because, again, here in the United States, we tend to take things and we commercialize them and we distill them down into give each other a bunch of stuff and drink up a little bit, and except for the mother, of course, don't do that. Different things. We make it a backyard party event rather than what it was originally, which was because now there's so many births, there's so many people on the planet that, not to sound kind of like a disconnected jerk about it, but what's one more person as far as statistics go? And I think some people kind of feel like, oh yeah, we're having another person in the family. And families individually, close families, might see it as really important, but the rest of the community might be like, oh yeah, that's great, fantastic. Whereas in older times, the population was much lower. Older times, you didn't have people everywhere. You needed more people.
Yep.
And it might not have been dire circumstances, but it might have been just like, hey, you know what? Here's another person to grow our community. This is fantastic. This is amazing. We got to make sure that this is a big deal. We got to talk about this, invite the whole town, And I think that's where we've kind of lost the plot on this, so to speak. It's one of those things again that here in the United States, because this is the only country I've ever lived in, I can't speak directly for other places, but from what I've seen here, it just seems like something that we've diluted a little bit. What do you think about that take, Rob?
I mean, we got to remember too that a lot of times with these things, people died fairly young. There wasn't modern medicine. There wasn't antibiotics. I was just having a conversation with my son earlier about how they used to amputate legs in the Civil War. Piece of wood, bite down on it so you don't swallow your tongue, drink some whiskey first, and we're going to cut your leg off. Because if not, you would die. You would die of gangrene and things like that. So there was sort of a celebration, like, and this is why a lot of times they had like 10, 15 kids, because some of them died so young. So it was celebrated like, okay, now we have another member of the family, but it was more like another member to help out. Because once they reached a certain age, and they would babysit the ones underneath them if they were going to have more. And it was looked upon more as a survival trait to have children and to get them acclimated to the world. So it was like a party, fires were lit, people got drunk, they celebrated. But nowadays, it's not as big of a thing because we do have modern medicine. We do have a pretty large population in the United States and in the world as a whole. And so we don't have to celebrate it with as much pomp and circumstance as we did back in the day, because most births come out fairly well. Of course, you have a couple that don't, but because we have hospitals, because we have modern medicine, because we have a better standard of living, people live into their 80s, 90s, sometimes 100s. But back then, people didn't make it to 40. So it's like we got to celebrate life while we have it, because it's not as prevalent that people are surviving. People are getting plagues, they're getting killed in battle because we didn't have modern medicine. So if we look at it from that lens or that scope and break it down, we understand that the reason they were partying, the reason they were celebrating, is because, first of all, here's a new member of the family, of the population, of the community as a whole. Because you get into times where there's more of a burgeoning population, like Victorian England, for example. You have more people being born than people were dying, really, and it becomes a drain on society. Not to be negative, but back then, I mean, it was a drain on society. You have poor people creating poor people, creating poor people. And so you don't have that higher standard of living. You don't have modern medicine. So you're not going to celebrate it as much. I mean, I'm sure you celebrate it within like that family, but the times before that where we were more, spaced apart. Yeah. Native Americans, they would celebrate the births of children with fiery celebrations, people getting high off, peyote or marijuana that was in the fields, and celebrating life, celebrating the community, celebrating a stronger community, because now you have somebody else that's being brought into the community. And now that does two things. One is it keeps your family lineage going, and two, it keeps your community as a whole going. But once that stuff sort of dies out and we have these large cities and these large populations, there's no real need for it. There's no real need for the huge celebrations. That's why usually it's just, like you said, family, maybe a couple friends, but it's not the whole community. all of Canton didn't go to your wife's baby shower. They were like,
Nah.
yeah, we're getting a new member in Canton. You
Right.
know what I mean? So it's like, in the past,
I
it
would have
was
had to go to
celebrated.
that one because I
Oh
would have
yeah,
had to watch
if the
out
whole
for some people.
if the whole city turns out, I mean, yeah, now you that's yeah, Canton,
Sometimes.
yeah, whole city, fireworks, gunshots,
Yikes.
whatever. But yeah, basically you are celebrating something because you're a close knit community of people. So when a lot of times they'd bring you foods, they would bring you basically like housewarming gifts, because it wasn't just about the baby, it was about the family that was around the baby. So you might get some wood for the fire, you might get some food, you might get some plates, you might get some some jewelry, uh, something that the whole family could use, maybe a new carafe for your water, just something that would say, hey, this is, you're bringing a new member of the family, let's help support that family. But nowadays you get diapers, maybe a rattle, like you said, a stuffed lamb, and men celebrate their own in their own way. We celebrate,
There are a couple too
we
on my
celebrate when we
list
get
about the
together.
fathers.
We get together and get drunk and then be like, yeah, just gotta have this baby. Woo! You're gonna be tired.
Give me another course.
Yeah, give me another course, or do you want to play Destiny? Stuff like that. So
That was a ritual. That was a ritual all the time. Steven, what do you think about the way that we look at a birth these days versus before, considering what we've just been talking about?
Well, I think you made a good point about commercialization, and it's very focused on buying gifts for the person now, whereas back in the day, like Rob was saying, it was more focused on just celebrating that you were still alive, and it was more of a big thing for the whole community. But another thing that I found interesting during my research was actually ancient Egypt. They didn't celebrate birthdays like we think they did. They celebrated birthdays on the day that you became the pharaoh, because they believed that was the day the god was reincarnated within the pharaoh. So I always thought that was interesting as well.
it's a spiritual rebirth almost.
Yeah, exactly.
Some cultures didn't celebrate your birthday until you became of age, because you weren't a contributing person, or you weren't like you weren't a man, quote unquote, or you weren't like a woman ready to provide for the community. So that was your first, as an adult, that became your birthday, which is an interesting kind of way to look at it. We're going to take a look at some of the old traditions here. Speaking of ancient Egypt, they performed rituals, of course, and they involved the what they would do upon birth is that they would take the child separately, and both the mother and the child would both have to go through a series of rituals, like fragrant oils and different things, to, quote, contain and eliminate the pollution of birth. Basically, they're trying to clean everybody up, get everybody, presentable, but also trying to minimize any chance of infection, which is a thing that, while they don't say these things explicitly, we know from historical context that the ancient Egyptians were pretty well advanced medically, as far as you could be with the tools you had at the time, from what we're aware of. They might have had more, of course, but we don't know, because we can only talk about what we found.
That's a
and
whole
what
other thing.
Mr. Zahi Hawass has allowed us to know. So, and after that, they may have done rituals in the household to make sure it was clean, to make sure there were no negative spirits, things. And it was all done to ensure that the baby would live and that the mother would live. Because just like today, things can be dicey. You don't always know that anybody's going to pull through things. There are going to be medical complications and whatnot. In ancient India, which they still carry a lot of this forward today. A lot of this stuff is very similar. They have an event that dates back to the Vedic ages, and we've talked about the Vedic stories and about the gods flying around on their islands of fortresses and assaulting people. They usually hold this party. It's called Samantha, not Samantha, like, hey, it's Samantha over there, but Samantha as an event. It's held in the 7th or 8th month prior to the birth. They shower the mother with dry fruits, sweets, and other gifts that may help the baby's growth. They do a musical event to please the baby's ears. And because it's common knowledge that the baby's ears would start functioning within the womb, which is something that if you've had kids before, anybody in the chat room, we know that you can talk to your kid through the belly and things like that. I used to put headphones with like power metal and stuff just to see if she would start fighting me. And she usually did. She punched me in the face a few times. But the ritual prays for a healthy baby and mother, as well as a happy delivery and motherhood. In ancient Greece, they celebrated pregnancy after the birth with a shout after the labor has ended to indicate the peace had arrived, which is very dramatic. But again, Greece had things like the professional mourners, as we learned from the death rituals. So getting really loud and obnoxious was kind of a thing when a big thing happened in Greece. Before we get into medieval Europe, Stephen, what are your thoughts about how these areas of the world celebrated the upcoming birth? What do you think?
I thought it was really interesting how different cultures across the world would celebrate it differently, because until we started looking into it, I always just thought it was every year you get older, it was the day you were born, therefore it was your birthday. So like, it's very interesting how different cultures around the world actually came up with their own different ideas for how to celebrate it and what it meant to them.
Rob, any thoughts about it?
Like I said, it all plays back into the concept of celebrating a person coming into the world to unite the community. Greece is hilarious to me because, like we had the professional mourners last week, I could just see a raucous crowd just going out there and shouting for no apparent reason. You get
while the baby's still crying as it's out.
Yeah. You get some of that wine flowing, and next thing you know, everybody's just yelling randomly, probably at the moon or the sun or whatever.
Sounds like fun.
But for the most part, we see that it doesn't really change much. Nothing has really changed in terms of these celebrations because we all celebrate our children in different ways. But instead, like we said before, instead of a whole like community, it's a couple people. But I think that it's fascinating how there's different takes on how people are born. Coming out and shouting like, yeah, because it was a process. That's another thing we have to understand. Giving birth back then was a process. There was no epidural. There was a chance that the mother could die. There was a chance that the baby could die. There was a chance that both could die. Blood loss was very much a thing. And there was no, it was a straight up birth, and they gave birth. And so that, I think too, that by and large is also a reason to be celebrated. Both the mother and the child lived. You want to shout that. You want that because, we take that for granted here. We think for the most part, it's going to be okay. We know that there could be complications from giving birth, but for the most part, we live in a pretty safe society where we don't have to worry about the mortality rates. There are some things we still have to worry about with babies and mothers and things, transmissions of different diseases and such, but it's not like, most women don't die in childbirth. There's it's just, it's more uncommon than it was back then. So,
to keep on going a little bit about Greece, because I forgot to mention this while I was initially talking about it, but 5 to 7 days after the shouting, there's a ceremony called amphidromia to indicate that the baby had integrated into the household, which is an interesting way of phrasing it. What if the baby doesn't integrate in the
Yeah,
household?
what if the
It's like,
baby? What if the
screw you
baby's already
guys, I'm
causing
out.
trouble? Yeah, what
I
if
don't
the
know.
baby's causing
It
trouble?
doesn't really explain that. That's a weird way of looking at it.
What if the baby comes out, gives both the mother and the father the middle finger, and
Yeah.
says nope, and just starts rolling down the hill like, "I'm out of here. You guys keep this to yourself. This family sucks."
In wealthy families, they had a public ceremony called the Decate, which after 10 days indicated the mother's return to society, which means that if you were wealthy, you could probably hire somebody to look after your child, and 10
Yep.
days later, you're back doing whatever you were doing,
It's wild.
which is pretty quick. I mean, I know people complain today about maternity leave being kind of short, but
Yeah.
10 days is awfully short.
10 days
that's-
is short.
That's pretty quick. And apparently, the 10-day period is still observed in modern-day Iran.
Are we surprised? Are we really
Because-
surprised?
Well, you push the baby out. It's time for you to do whatever else you're going to do. You're done. Come on, keep on going.
But to be fair, a lot of times in Islamic households, the mother doesn't work. She
Mhm.
usually stays home and provides for the family, cooking, cleaning, taking care of the children. So it is easier to transition into that
Mhm.
than to transition into like, all right, I got to go back to the office, or I got to go
Yeah.
back to whatever job I have. And that makes sense because the woman, for the most part, in Islamic countries takes care of the children. The men just earn the money for the most part.
And make
And
more
that's
children.
the thing. That's the thing that we have to understand here is a lot of cultures, the men don't necessarily participate in any of that. They don't participate in raising the child. A lot of times, if it's a girl, they just, I mean, and listen, that's harsh, and I'm not saying it isn't, but me and Spider, we both helped deliver the baby. Steven, unless you are a gigolo of some form or fashion that's run around and had a lot of kids, that's a whole experience in and of itself. But that's what we have to understand is a lot of those cultures, like Iran, like Iraq, like Muslim countries, the woman stays home. There's, she might go to the store to get provisions for the family, but she's not going to work a full-time job and raise the kids. She's raising the kids.
Mm. And now getting to a slightly darker part of this,
Nice.
which goes along with your what we
Nice.
were talking about, how conditions are better now for birthing children than they used to be. Medieval Europe, which is of course the Dark Ages, where things were kind of
I like that.
not real great, due to the likelihood that the mother or the child might pass during childbirth, they had a lot of things that they would do. They would have a priest often visit the woman during labor so that she could confess her sins. She could take confession because they assumed that the chances were high enough that she could pass during the birth that, well, you want to make sure you've confessed. You don't want to, pass and not be ready. Which is a big, I can imagine just the feeling of you're trying to get this baby out and you're emotional and you're just like, oh man, we've come to this point. And now you got to think about this priest is wanting me to confess sins because he's telling me I might be dead soon. And, I might be going off to see the Lord. And it's like, that's a lot of pressure.
Quick
And-
question before you continue. I don't mean to interrupt you. Do you think it was also because they thought the sin could be passed on to the baby from the mother?
I think so.
Potentially, because
Okay.
continuing on here, it adds credence to that. Because after the birth, and usually on the same day, they would do a baptism for the baby.
Okay.
Like right off the bat, because they're like, hey, this is a new life. We don't want any of those evil thoughts getting around into this baby right off the bat. No evil spirits, no demons, no nothing. Baptize it now. So that's a very, very good assumption, to be honest.
Can I add one more real quick?
Yeah.
I also had in my notes that it said after the birth, there were a few more rituals they would do, such as the burning of the umbilical cord, which was meant to destroy any remaining sin from conception, and herbs would be used to remove any remaining sin as well.
Yeah,
Because
and we have to
that's
remember. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll get to you in just one second. That's the interesting thing about medieval Europe is that the process the process, even though they wanted more people in the community, the process was still sinful, super sinful. And you were wrong to want to do that. But we're glad that you had a baby because then they can contribute to society. But you were bad for thinking about doing that to begin with. That
Yeah.
was medieval Europe. It was messed up.
Sir, get your ding dong out of there.
Go ahead.
It was there. Give me a second. Let me piece it all back together again. Oh, in some cultures they would eat the placenta as
Oh,
well.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, it was for good
Gross.
luck. Well, it was thought that you're returning those
Nutrients.
nutrients back into the body, back into where it came from. So, but yes, yeah, that's it. It's wild to think that don't do the thing that made the baby. Don't even think about doing the thing that made the baby. Do not. But hey, baby, how you doing? You're here now. You're a sinner, sir. Keep your ding dong in your pants, but have babies. It was a very strange paradox during that time in the Dark Ages. There's a reason why it was called the Dark Ages, and it wasn't because somebody turned off all the lights.
Now, in Renaissance Europe, because people were a little bit more enlightened at the time, or at least they believed so, they celebrated pregnancies with other kinds of birth gifts, usually functional items like wooden trays and bowls, paintings, sculptures, and food. Things that were both useful but also cultural because they were enlightened. They were, it was a great time. They saw it as almost mystical, and they I think it was because of how hard things might have been beforehand that they were like, you know what, we got to make sure we celebrate that this has happened because this is pretty magical. Because bad things have happened before, bad things might happen afterwards, but we're just, we're glad you're here. We're glad this happened. Here's some stuff to help stimulate your mind and your brain to help you think of great ways that we can still have a great society. Let's see, in Victorian England, they did different things. They were kind of like, and there's still a little bit of that today because leading up to the aristocracy and things of that nature, it was always kind of like, well, who is the father? Okay. Is that for sure? Is anything going on the side? We got to make sure because it's very important. Family lineage. We don't want any embarrassments over here from Joe down the street, delivering the paper.
Or the milk.
And so they took a lot of those things very seriously. They treated it with a lot of discretion. Like they were kind of like, if it was something that they could verify that, oh yeah, this is all above board, they had a nice little get together. If it was something like, well, Jenny, we're a little disappointed in you, but we'll get together with some of the family. And they would, because they wanted to have a good birth, but they were not too happy about it.
Yeah.
So it was kind of strange in Victorian England around the time for births and things. They wanted to celebrate kind of, but they also were kind of like, we can't prove who the baby came from. We don't know who provided, so let's not make a big deal about it. We don't want the neighbors to know. So it was interesting. And then they would usually have a christening when the child was 8 to 12 weeks old, and that became a more important part of the child growing up because now the baby is here. We can't really sweep this under the rug. The baby's here, but now we can forget the parentage part. We just, we're happy to have this member of our family. Let's give him a good name, him or her, so that they can represent the family in a good way, unlike his parents, because we don't know about them.
Yeah.
So it was really kind of
it was a touch and go situation, really. And poor people were looked down on for having babies as well by the aristocracy at the time because they looked at them like, you're trash. Why are you having children to continue to bring trash into the world? And the rich, you would like if you it was so bad, to Spider's point, that if somebody of noble stock got a woman pregnant, or vice versa, a woman of noble stock got pregnant by a street ruffian, it was hushed. It was, shh, don't tell anybody. Sometimes the baby was taken after the baby was born and given to a family, or removed from society, or removed from the world as a whole. So Victorian England births are very strange. They're very much like, oh, we think that Wayne the Pain might be the baby of that, or might be the father of that baby. But it was Lighthouse that was the husband, so who knows what's going
Dun, dun,
on.
dun.
So unless you had verifiable proof that it was the mother and father, obviously it would be the mother, but the father would be the issue. Then
Does
yeah,
that mean video? Like, how?
no.
What kind
Well,
of proof?
a lot of times it was based on actions.
Okay.
We scared Lighthouse by saying that he had a baby. He was like, "Oh, well, surprise! You have a child, even though you probably don't know that. But yeah, you've got one.
And a wife.
We broke it here on this Uncanny. No, he doesn't have a wife. It's his mistress.
Oh.
Yeah, that Wayne the Pain has been,
Ooh.
But was it the real Violent J?
Was it the real Lighthouse?
So let's dial this forward back to the modern age again. We're moving away from the United States as far as we know what we do here. Other countries still sometimes have some serious parties or celebrations or somber rituals about everything, and we're going to go through a few of these. In Armenia, a baby shower is called Armenia, whatever you want to call it. I'm bad at everything in life. That's why I drink so much.
I'm bad at everything.
A baby shower is called, and this is going to be even worse, Karsunk. Don't know. It's all cute.
I'm just going to take your word for it.
It's celebrated 40 days after the birth, so it's an entire month and some extra. And it's a mixed party for all relatives and friends, and guests usually bring gifts for the baby or parents. Now, that makes some sort of sense, again, because based off of older sources, it gives time to make sure the baby's going to be healthy, the mom's going to be healthy. It doesn't let a bunch of strange people come in and visit with the mother and pass germs around and things like that. So it's common sense. In Bulgaria, home of Rusev, as a superstition, no baby gifts are given to the family before the baby's birth. Another interesting thing. However, family and friends still give or send unsolicited gifts to the newborn baby, even if some babies are kept from the public for the first 40 days to prevent early infections. So that's interesting. It doesn't say that they have any sort of parties, but after the baby is born, you send them stuff or drop them off. Chinese tradition holds that you have a celebration 1 month after the baby is born. And here we're seeing a sort of pattern in other countries where they acknowledge that the first month of the child's life is important for the immune system. You got to let it develop on its own. You can't just bring in a bunch of strange things from all these people, from all your work friends, from all your relatives, from out of town, from all these people. You can't just bring all them in and all want to carry and hold the baby and say hello and get all in its face and spread those germs, which is a problem we have in the United States. In the United States, everybody's like, hey, look at my baby. Sticks it in your face. Oh, great. That's a great baby. Can I see it? Gets all up in the baby's face. And, we've got some of the best medical science in the world here in the United States, but we're really kind of dumb with how we apply some of that. To be honest. In Costa Rica, they have multiple events held for a single pregnancy for the family between coworkers and friends. Modern Egypt, they have a celebration called the Sabau or the Sabu or it's Sebouh. If anybody knows modern Egyptian, because I don't.
Sable.
It's celebrated 1 week after birth, and Sabo means week in Egypt, apparently. But this is a big deal. It's usually celebrated with a DJ, a lot of decorations,
Nice.
a food and candy buffet,
Ooh.
and activities and games. So people go nuts. People go ham on it.
Sounds
We-
like a carnival.
We had the babies in the wrong country.
Yeah.
See, I mean, in Egypt, you're gonna have the DJ come out, maybe play some dance tunes on the track. The baby's gonna be bouncing because can't do anything else.
That's why he's just in the corner watching, like, nobody better tell anything about this country to the outside world. He's the DJ. That's what they don't tell you. He's the DJ.
He's making sure government approved music only.
Only.
In Guatemala, only women attend the event. Again,
Makes sense.
historically a thing that's
That makes sense.
for the female relatives because they're more. A lot of them may have already had their own children, or they're going to, or they plan to, or they're just. It's a sisterhood kind of thing. It's
Makes
not
sense.
meant for the dudes to just be like, "Yeah, I'm having a baby. Let's drink some scotch over here."
Get loud and raucous.
And they'll usually celebrate more than one baby shower, one with close friends, coworkers, family, but it'll all be only women, which again, as we said, makes sense. In southern India, the expectant mother wears bangles and they're adorned with flowers for a celebration. And in some parts of, I thought it was in India because I saw this earlier. Yeah, here we go. In Gujarat, which is a state in India, there's a religious ritual because they're mostly Hindu in that region during the 5th or 7th month of pregnancy, usually only for the first child, which is something Stephen mentioned earlier. The expectant mother can only go to her father's house for delivery of the baby, which is a strange notion that you go to your dad's house to have the baby.
My dad would have been pissed.
Hey, Dad, we gotta have the baby here. Let's bring in the nurses.
No!
I think there's room.
They offer special prayer and food to the goddess Randall, the wife of the sun.
Randall.
That's what I thought too. Just some dude in the corner drinking a beer. Hey, my name's Randall.
There was another one here which was interesting.
Sorry.
I can't find it on the list.
Randall.
Because in other parts of it, like different parts of India do weird stuff. Like that's southern India. I know we're all talking about Randall over here, but in West Bengal, they do a party named Sad or Sad Bokan. Sad Bokan. There's like a lot more consonants in there than what I pronounced. It's observed on the 7th month of pregnancy. After that party, the woman resides in her father's house instead of her husband's until the birth. Now, what's interesting about this, because I know we're still laughing about Randall, but the end part of pregnancy, that last couple months, and I don't want people to get upset. I'm not trying to be sexist about it. But the last part of pregnancy is when the mother-to-be is at the most moody and the most emotional because of the hormones developing and all that other kind of stuff. So you shuffle her off to her dad's house for the last couple months, and you got a couple months where you just do whatever you want. I guess I don't know. You probably still have to
hang out
work
with Randall.
Can we bring that tradition here?
It's an interesting concept.
I'm gonna get
I think the whole point is to preserve harmony because people being people, People
You're
argue,
right.
people get,
Yeah.
emotions run high during pregnancy already.
Well,
And once you get towards the end,
hormones in women are off the charts because of the pregnancy. Because I
yeah,
mean, you got to understand something. It's a symbiotic relationship. The baby's taking the nutrients that the mother usually gets. She's in pain. She's having a rough time, which I totally understand. I get that. It's a definitely strange tradition, but I understand it. I understand
yeah.
why that would be a problem. You don't want words being said that can't be taken back.
Um, all right, no more Randall. We're done with Randall. Um, in coastal Karnataka, which is in India, of course. Again,
That's
there's
not
like
a
so
real
many parts
country.
of India. Well, that's what Wikipedia says. Um, it's popularly considered that pregnant women crave fruits and eatables, it says, which could be
Edibles?
anything. It
Edibles?
says eatables here. I
Damn.
think somebody made a bad edit during the pregnancy period.
Have some
And the
eatables.
ceremony was designed in the olden days to fulfill the desire or food cravings of the mother to be. Now, me personally, I had to take several drives in the middle of the night to find a place that was open 24 hours to find lentil soup and JoJo fries because that's what she wanted.
Jeez.
Big potato wedges and
Salt.
lentil soup
Salt
and
seems
things.
to be the thing. Salt seems to be the thing. It was a very similar
I
situation.
knew a person when I worked at the hospital east of here, a lot younger. I knew what one of the nurses she talked about. Oh yeah, when I was pregnant, I liked to just scrape chalk on my teeth, and I was like,
What?
really? Yeah, she liked to scrape chalk on her teeth, not eat it, not gnaw on it, not chew on it. She just got big old
Ugh.
kids chalk like you get for your
Oh,
kids
that
to
gives
draw
me,
on, and
because I
just
can hear it in my head. I can hear it, and
yeah.
it just, pickles.
So
Pickles were a thing. I think my mom liked pickles and Snickers bars. I think that was what my mom liked.
pickles are a common one. I don't
Yeah,
I don't know what the significance is. I didn't find anything about that. Like I'm sure there's some
Vinegar.
biochemical
yeah.
that could
He's
be it.
probably right.
You
It's
know,
probably just that taste of just like I don't. Yeah, I get it. I do.
it's a preservative too, so maybe it's the body saying, "Yep, we got to keep ourselves clean from things.
Yeah,
Here, take the vinegar and whatnot."
yeah,
It's an antibacterial, different
yeah.
things like that. So it makes
Vinegar can
sense.
clean stuff. Vinegar cleans things, so it makes sense.
So all that being said, now we're approaching the end here. It's while we again in the United States have kind of made it, hey, it's a thing. Hey, you're having a baby. We're gonna give you all the useful stuff that we can, and then we're just having a big party about it. Compared with the rest of the world, it is interesting how much more, I guess, how much more effort they put into it. I mean, I guess here you can, I hear some people out in the audience saying, I put a lot of effort into my daughter's baby shower. It was a big event. Don't denigrate my thing, whatever.
Yeah,
But compared to what they do in Eastern countries, it's a lot more elaborate. It's a lot more, and it's based more on older tradition than
yep,
here, and that kind of makes sense too because the United States, most of us are descended from people who came from different places.
yep.
We didn't have an established history here in the United States. We're only a couple hundred years old, to be honest. Um, the Native Americans had their own thing, but because of the fact that most of that has been wiped out, very unfortunately, we don't know as much about it as we could. So we don't have an established heritage of that kind of thing in the United States, which is why it's more of a casual thing for us compared to other places which view the birth as this is a magical thing. This is a thing that contributes to society as a whole. This is an event to be always celebrated in multiple ways, and we want to make sure we preserve that heritage. Um, Stephen, what do you think about the contrast between how other countries, especially the Eastern world, does things versus how we do things here in the United States? Do you think we have room for improvement, maybe?
Yeah, I definitely. I don't remember what culture you said it was, but that one with the candy and all that, like I want to do that party.
Egypt.
Egypt.
That was
Egypt.
Egypt.
Yes, I want to do that one.
You have to ask Swahi first. You got to ask Swahi if you can do that.
Because, like,
He's got to approve it.
we
He's
get a
gotta approve
birthday
it.
cake and we get presents. That's fun and all, but that sounds like a whole like carnival. That sounds like you were saying about, a long time ago with the ancient cultures being more community oriented. That sounds like it could be community oriented. It's so big.
But remember, a lot of those countries are homogenous in population. So it's not like here, we're not homogenous. We're made up of different races and different cultures.
Ah, yes.
Rob, final thoughts on it.
It's interesting how we celebrate the birth of our children, whether that be mine or yours, Steven's children that aren't existent, Lighthouse's children that he doesn't know he has. But it's very interesting how that works. And I wanted to touch on something in North Korea, because I didn't know if you were going to hit North Korea. It's deeply rooted in traditional Korean practices and an influence of the country's state ideology. So the state has a handle, which I'm not surprised. There's no surprise there.
Yeah.
But I feel like for me, it's interesting. But once again, I put that with our country not having those close knit communities, because for the most part, we're not a homogenous nation. People that do come over from Asian countries or African countries tend to stick with their own. They don't tend to branch out and bring other people into their circle. So a lot of the time they still will complete those birth rituals. But the problem is that we are not a one race nation. India is made up of folks that are of Indian descent. So to them, they're all kind of unified in their celebrations. We are not. We're like, oh yeah, Debbie, she's having a shower next week, and the girls are going to get together and buy her presents. The only time I've heard of because there are some guys that go to these showers, and hey, if that's the thing, that's the thing. But for the most part, I think it's fascinating how different countries deal with births. I think it's fascinating how ancient civilizations dealt with births. I think we do have room to improve. I think we should celebrate it more as the joy of life, because I think a lot of times the birth celebrations we do here is more about the joy of motherhood. It's more about, oh, you're glowing, you look so good, yada yada and blase blase. As to our other countries, cultures, it's like life. We're celebrating the emergence of a new life and motherhood. We're celebrating them both. But here it's usually just motherhood. You're just like, oh, this, that, and the third. So I think we could improve on some birth practices here. I think we could take some nods from places like Egypt. We obviously know that Stephen's baby shower is going to have a candy fountain of some form or fashion. So I think that
and a DJ.
And a DJ is Wahi himself in the corner, DJ, spinning Egypt's hits. But I think we could do better.
Now, as a final note before we go, in the United Kingdom, they do have one for the dads. And it's separate, and it's called, I don't know why, because it doesn't explain that, but it's called Wetting the Baby's Head. Now, I think that's probably a crude joke, to be honest.
That is 100%.
I think it's a
I
crude
know
joke.
where that goes, and I'm not going to
get into it.
No.
I just think it's a crude joke.
It is a crude
joke.
But
it's a party for the dudes where you can have them at local pubs or bars, a friend's house, or the soon-to-be grandfather's house. And it involves having a few drinks and getting drunk with a group of friends. Which is, not particularly surprising. Being male myself,
yeah.
I can understand that that's kind of the thing that we do.
Yeah,
we do that for every celebration.
We do that for all the celebrations.
Get together and we get drunk a little bit, and then that's it. That's the party. So, on that note, that's all I got for you. Some final business before we go. We have some things coming up. We have some secret things we can't talk about just yet.
Oh, it's a great thing
I've
too.
got a secret.
It's great. I can't wait.
Mr. Roboto. But
Domo arigato.
as far as short-term stuff, there is all of our various projects going on. We've got the last episode that I had of my podcast. I interviewed the author of the novel Jack and V. It was a good conversation. We got into some pretty deep thoughts about the future of AI in this country. And I'm going to keep doing probably Dragon Age on my game stream. Rob, what do you have going on right now in the near future?
So I am running through Mass Effect 3 on my Twitch. I am also working on my Theologian channel. I have been working on some other stuff. I've got a very, very awesome thing in the works that'll be coming up here in October, but I can't talk about it yet. But it will be revealed soon. I need to put some pieces and parts in place. Something we've wanted to do for a long time, but I'm going to finally make that happen. Also, we're going to be doing the Afterlife next week. I will be taking the reins on that to further bring this set up, this block of topics to a close. So we're going to close it out with the Afterlife. And that's really about it. Please check me out on my TikTok channel. I'm doing all sorts of little videos and such over there. I just put together something about... one of them was the blood of Saint Januarius. For those that don't know, it is coagulated blood that sometimes liquefies on certain days. And they just elected a new pope from North America, which is kind of a first. So that's interesting. India and Pakistan are at war, kind of, and that's also probably interestingly bad. And also I did a thing on the hexagon of Saturn. So if you folks don't know what the hexagon of Saturn is, you should check that out. But that's what I have cooking up in the oven.
Steven, what's coming up with you? What do you got coming up for the next Oddities Around the World?
Oddities Around the World is obviously going to be more birth rituals. I already have my notes, actually, so I will probably record that either later tonight or tomorrow. So I'm going to get into some more, like you were talking about, birth rituals around the world. For example, Japan, South Korea, Ghana, Russia, Germany, etc.
Good deal. Got some DLC for everybody after the fact. So that's it. That's what we got. There was something I was just about to mention, and now I can't remember what it was.
The website, ltatm.net.
Oh, the merch. We've got merch. Merch. Go to ltatm.net. Let's talk about the madness. And there is a LTATM store section. I just added tank tops for the ladies. I think I can probably add tank tops for the dudes too. I don't know. I haven't had a demand for it yet. But if you're a guy out there and you want a tank top and you don't want to wear a frilly ladies tank top, let me know. I'll make one for you. You can get the classic.
He has the sweatshop in his house.
They're in the attic. They're doing the work. The classic colored.
That's why you make your daughter go to bed so early.
Stop it. This Uncanny Earth logo that you see in the corner next to Steven there, you see that logo? That's on a shirt. And you can also get the modernized black and white Art Deco kind of logo on shirts as well, both in tank tops and in t-shirts and on stickers and on mugs and pretty much whatever I want to put up there. You can get it. Go there. Check it out. It will help fund our long-term goals of being the best paranormal podcast, historical, paranormal, everything podcast on the face of the planet.
On the face of this uncanny earth. You get it there? Yeah. Aliens and all that jazz.
So that's it. We're getting out of here. Have a good night. Say the thing.
Why be boring when you can be uncanny? We hope you folks have a beautiful day and a beautiful night. And don't do anything we wouldn't do. But if you do, name it after us.